Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Whip. I'm Brenden, the GM of the eMLB Baltimore Orioles. Joining me today is Tom Falsone, the 2024 World Series champion and two-time AL West champion in his time with the Angels. Tom, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I'm
I said
excited
the
to get
last name right,
started.
right?
Falsone. Yep, you got it.
Cool. I kind of just threw it out there. I didn't check before, so I wanted to see if I ended up correct here.
Yep. Good job.
Well, we'll jump right into this. On the topic of you being a two-time, division champion, you've been with the team 3 full seasons now. Is that correct?
Yeah, 24, 25, 26, and a little bit of 23.
About how much of the 23 season did you actually get to run the team?
Maybe like 40 games, something like that.
So you had a full off season to like prepare for 24, and then kind of run your team from there on, right?
Yeah, I kind of came in 23, saw where things were at. It wasn't great. There was talent, but it was kind of mismanaged. So I
Gotcha.
came into 24 and I kind of viewed it more as a rebuild year than really a year that I was going to go all out. I mean, I traded away Joe Adele, who was like a top 5 center fielder and very young and still in arbitration. And I traded away, I forget, maybe a pitcher. But yeah, I don't know. I traded away some key guys, plugged some holes, and ended up winning over 100 games and taking the series. So funny how baseball works sometimes.
It really is, and I don't know if anyone else can say that they won a World Series in their first year, except for maybe Ben, which in the first year of the 2.0 era.
Yeah.
We look down here at your records in your 3 seasons running the team. 102 wins your first full year, winning the World Series. 94 and 69 the second year. You also won the division, then losing in the ALCS. And then last year, won 100 games again, but did not make it to the CS, losing in the divisional round to the World Series Astros.
Yeah.
How does it, I guess from your standpoint, where are you at with your team after a disappointing loss in last year's playoffs?
I mean, I'm all in for this year, next year, and the year after that, at least. As long as I've got Trout on this team, I'm gunning for a World Series every year. And Ohtani, really. I mean, there's so much talent in the league as a whole, but I think I've amassed enough talent to really go toe-to-toe with anybody else in this league. I mean, Houston is obviously a juggernaut, but I think we stand up really well next to them as a whole.
Oh, I like it. Well, speaking of amassing talent, I don't know if you've seen this stat before, but I'm going to show it to you here. This is your record, the 3 years that you have been there. That is the best record over the last 3 years.
Hey, it's nice to have a massive budget, you know.
It really is.
You get a lot of flexibility.
But it's the best. It's the best win total by 11 wins over the second place Astros.
It's nice to have something up on Ben every once in a while, right?
Big budget plays a role in it. You can obviously afford to pay guys, but it's not all just free agents. What do you do from a team building aspect to keep your team consistently competitive?
Really, I don't spend any money in free agency. I generally look at the free agents we have, and there's not a lot of top end talent, and what little there is gets massively overpaid.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer to really look for trade opportunities, either minor leaguers that I think are going to plug holes in the future, depending on where my system is at certain positions, or, finding guys like Jeremy Frank that I can make a trade for out of depth at other positions. So yeah, that plus trying to draft really well has really been what's allowed me to stay in contention, alongside being able to pay a couple players a ridiculous amount of money.
Well, you get the players in, and then when they become superstars, you can keep them, right?
Right. I don't have the struggles that, I mean, even you with a larger budget now with Baltimore, like you've got to make some pretty big decisions about some of your superstars because you just can't keep them all.
Yeah. At this point in time, I'm like 12th or 13th in budget, and I'm 100 million less than you almost.
I sometimes daydream about what it would be like to not have Tomoya Mori on this team because, oh my God, the money I
You
could be
could really go
dropping
nuts.
on free agents. Oh, it would be fun. We'll get there eventually.
That actually, I did want to ask about Maury, just as kind of like a side question. You went and got another catcher this year. Do you envision Maury no longer taking the majority of plate appearances at the catcher position?
Well, if you look at him last season, he really dipped offensively. I think he was somewhere around a 70 to 80 OPS plus, which for the money he's making is just not doing it. And he's not exactly a great defensive catcher. So when he loses that middle of the lineup bat that he's had the last couple of years, I mean, he's making a lot of money, but I can't afford to have a weak link like that on my team. So bringing in Joey Bart, who has struggled himself, at least gives me a platoon option, left-right splits. Bart's got the better glove. At least allows me to play him 50-50. And then I can go from there, see who plays well and who doesn't, and adjust time as needed.
Okay. Well, Bart was one of just a couple additions that you made this offseason. We'll get to the losses here in a second, but these are the primary additions. It looks like you made.
This is
Nolan
awesome.
Arenado, we'll talk about him in a second. Mayron Catalina, you acquired in a trade via the Dodgers. Michael Baez, I have no idea how to say it if there's no A in there, was your lone free agent signing, just a small 1-year deal.
Yep.
We'll start with it. We'll start with Arenado. You traded away your third baseman in the deal to get him. Do you feel like even at his older age, he's going to continue to produce at the level he has been?
He's not going to put up another 6-WAR season. I know that. He's not going to hit 50 home runs. But if I can get 30 home runs and a quality defensive season out of him, that's a huge step up from where Jung was for me. I mean, Jung has been a productive hitter, but his defense has always been suspect, and I feared that was hurting my pitching staff. I mean, Andrelton Simmons was kind of carrying that entire infield around him. There wasn't much defense on the infield. So I think bringing in Arenado is going to be honestly a bigger upgrade to my pitching and defense than to my lineup, even though he could still be a massive middle of the order bat for me.
Okay. Kind of a luxury where you can say that even if he's not going to be great, he's still going to be a solid contributor.
Right.
On Mayron Catalina, you got him from the Dodgers. Good first year, or good as a rookie in limited playing time. Less good his first full season, and then very disappointing last year. Do you view him as someone who can bounce back?
I do. I think he fits my team really well. That trade, I dealt away a fantastic first baseman, Louis Ramos. But that kind of opened up more playing time in my outfield because it allows me to shift Ohtani to DH. I think Catalina, you look at him, he was a top-tier prospect coming up. He lit the world on fire his rookie season, and he cooled down considerably after that. You look at his BABIP numbers, I mean, they're really, really low. So I think if he lays off the home run swing, drops to 25 to 30 home runs a season and can hit 250, 260, I think that's a reasonable goal. But he's got the power. He's got pretty good eye. I mean, it's been trending in the right direction, even with kind of a down year last 2 years. So for now, he'll be platooning with the left-handed hitter, Phil Williams, who had a fantastic year last year. I just struggle to trust him in a full-time workload.
Mm-hmm.
He just gives me another really good option, either off the bench or, starting versus left-handers. He can play all three outfield positions if needed. And he's a guy I had my eye on since he broke into the majors with the Dodgers. I thought he was a really fantastic looking player. And hopefully he can kind of get something going now that he's on the right side of town.
The better side of town between the two of you, right?
For now, we'll see. Dodgers are going to be a scary team this year.
Yes, I agree with that. Well, in order to get him, you ended up giving up one of your better players. We'll pull up the notable losses I mentioned earlier. Number one on that list, Louis Ramos. Had a very good year for you last year at 49 home runs. Obviously, there's a reason you feel comfortable letting him go. You have another good prospect coming up. But what was the motivation for you between trading him away instead of maybe shifting him to DH?
Mainly because having a full-time DH is tough on any team. I think it limits a lot of flexibility. And Ohtani, every time he pitches, he's in the DH spot. And I love Ramos. He's an amazing hitter. He's a homegrown guy. It hurt a little to let him go, but I think I have somebody that's going to play even better coming up behind him now. And so I could afford to give him away and give away his 50 or so home runs. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to have two full-time first base / DH hitters that need to be in the lineup every day. So, you look at him, he's pre-ARB, he just hit 49 homers, 928 OPS. I don't know if his value is ever really going to be higher. So at the time I thought, okay, I'll make a lateral shift at first base by moving him. I'll open up more playing time for Sean Thornton, for Johnny Rocca, for Phil Williams / Ryan Cafalina. And also improve my farm system in an area of need at third base, which at the time I didn't really have a plan for who was going to fill in after Jung eventually walked. I had Rocca, but I wasn't sold on him. So I targeted Kazansky, who I think could wind up being an above average everyday third baseman. It's a bit of a gamble, but GM CCP, he's going to get moderate, a few boosts a year, and that can only help. Also, we went to the Naval Academy, which I grew up right outside, so that's not a bad thing either.
So he's got good discipline, right?
He'll be working his ass off, I'm sure.
I love it. Well, you mentioned Jung walking there. Jung was a part of that trade to get Nolan Arenado, the 3-team trade between yourself, the Brewers, and the Stags. That trade did not get talked about very much in the podcast and the shows. We talked about it before we started recording here. So we're going to make up for lost ground here. This is your opportunity to kind of tell us, how did this trade come together? Like, how did you guys all meet together and decide that you were going to make this trade? How did you decide what pieces you would be comfortable moving out? And where do you feel like you sit after that trade? Do you feel like you massively won it? Do you feel like it was fairly even? Where did it end up at?
Well, so this kind of starts with the expansion draft, Arenado being unprotected, which didn't really make much sense to me. At first, he kind of flew under the radar because people look at that contract initially and say, oh, wow, like I can't just take on all this money, even though he just put up, one of his best years of his career. It was a Hall of Fame career. But then you realize that 45% is retained by the Cubs. So he goes to Portland in the expansion draft and immediately goes on the trade block. And I see that and I say, this is exactly what I need for my team. And so I talked to Attica, who is a member of my organization with his CCP, Qui-Gon Jinn, fantastic young pitcher. And we chatted. I said, hey, I really would like to trade with you, obtain Arenado, but my only thing is I have to move Jung first. I think he's got 1 year left on his arbitration years, and I knew I wasn't going to keep him long term, especially after a kind of rather disappointing season last year. And so from there, it was finding a third team that wanted to dance. And I sent a lot of feelers out and eventually found out that the team that actually lost, Arenado, suddenly needed a third baseman. So, it's funny how that works. But it worked out really well. We kind of all got together. I said, this is what I know I need to do. I know I need to bring in Arenado, and I know I need to send out Jung. What else can we do to make this work? And so I ultimately gave up a lot of really good players. I mean, Asa Lacy has been fantastic for me the entire time he's been in LA. well, both LAs. I loved him. He was great, but I looked at my pitching staff after obtaining Jeremy Frank with Qui-Gon Jinn coming up, with Cal Maduro on the team, with several other prospects that I liked, and I just knew that he wasn't a long-term piece for me. Made him available in the trade. I think Tim Swanson was a good young starting pitching prospect involved in the trade. You know, he's like a massive 6'9" lefty with a ton of room to grow. You know, might add velocity. I don't know if OTP really factors in size for pitchers on adding velocity. It would be cool if it did. I kind of like to approach my scouting of players like, you know, like a real life GM would, looking at tools, looking at physicality. And I don't always know if that really matters for OTP, but it makes it a little more fun for me.
Kind of role play a little bit more.
Yeah. So I forget. I think there was a fourth piece I sent out in that trade.
I can get that pulled up here for you. Just scroll down to it.
Oh, it was a reliever that also went to Minnesota. Also a great looking piece.
Arturo Rojas.
Yep, that's the one. He looks really solid, but I wasn't sure if I had placed for him on my roster this year. Would have been nice to keep him, but at the end of the day, that wasn't going to be the thing that stopped me from getting Arenado.
You feel like Arenado, I guess, relative to the other lineups in the league, namely competitive lineups in the league, namely Houston and the Mariner Mafia, where do you, with Arenado in your lineup, factoring in losing Ramos, how do you feel you stack up compared to them?
I think I'd put myself right on par with Houston, if that's not too brash of me. I mean, I'm going to get a full season of Barry Allen, who really played well for me in his first half a year. Going to have Trout, who hopefully, I mean, he's due for decline. He's 36 or so, but you know, maybe he'll age gracefully. We'll see. Ohtani's always in there. We got Arenado. Now we have Sean Thornton, who is just ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. He'll easily be able to replace the production I got from Luis Ramos, I think.
And that's actually something I had prepared here. Looking at your notable losses, you lost a first baseman, a third baseman, and a left-handed starting pitcher. Those are your three primary losses, along with Matthew Lugo. Yeah. If you look at the young players who are ready to jump up and fill roles in your organization, you see a first baseman, a left-handed starting pitcher, and then you obviously acquired Nolan Arenado via trade, plus Mr. Foxy, Cal Maduro, and I think that's the only ones I had on there. Kind of, I guess that ties into your consistent winning, having young players ready to step up and fill voids when you get rid of veterans.
Yeah, it's a huge piece of staying consistently competitive. If you're not continuously bringing up young guys that are ready to contribute, then you're either spending too much money in free agency, spending too much prospect capital to replace your holes, or you're getting worse. And so I've got some young guys that are ready to make the leap up to the majors, like you say, and I'm really excited to see what they can do, because it's not like everything, the entire success of the team is on them. We've got a lot of veteran established guys already that are putting up big numbers. But they will be important pieces to making this team a competitor this year.
I like it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you do. Especially considering that Houston's now on top of the mountain, not you. So we can start rooting for you again.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I've always been rooting against Houston. I don't know about you.
Well, you have, because they've been coming after you. I personally have been rooting against you for a little bit now, but I can be alongside you now.
That doesn't keep you from trading with me, though.
No, it doesn't. I didn't keep you from trading with anybody. I trade with everybody.
Yes, you do.
DMs are always open. Well, we've talked about the moves you've made this offseason. We've talked about the young players coming up. We've talked about a couple of the key parts of your lineup. I want you to walk me through your opening day roster and how you not necessarily lay out all your players, but how you feel your projected opening day roster will stand up to the other teams in this league. Like, where do you feel like you slot in?
I mean, if we start at the rotation, I think I have a pretty underrated rotation.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get a full season of Greg Briggs last year, and he looks every bit like a true ace. I mean, he really looks ready. I don't know if you care, but you've got your head scouting on at the OSA.
Oh,
Never.
yeah, he looks always great to change it.
He looks like he's ready to take that step, be a true Cy Young contender. And that's going to be a really important piece for my team if he can do that, because we kind of lacked that for a while last year. I didn't really ever feel fully comfortable going into the playoffs with like a number one starter. And part of that was because he was injured at the time. So him, you add in Jeremy Frank, the newer addition, for a full year. I think that'll be big. He's not an ace, but he's a very strong number 2, number 3 guy. And he kind of fits my team pretty well. He's a high strikeout guy. Hopefully this adjustment to the home run rate will help him a little as well. And
I think the home runs hurt a lot of pitchers last year.
Yeah, my park is a particularly friendly hitter's park to lefties. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out this year. What players that this change improves. But yeah, aside from them, you always got Ohtani, who won a Cy Young a few years ago, and he still looks ready. He's lighting up the strikeout leaderboards. 200 strikeouts, 50 home run season last year. Like, has that ever been done? I don't think so.
We could check the numbers, but I don't think so either.
It's a really incredible season he had last year, and I think WAR kind of underrates him as a pitcher for whatever reason. Maybe because he gives up too many home runs, and so he might be helped this next season as well. And then Sean Clisby, who had a really, really good first full season with the team. I think he actually got a couple Cy Young Award voting points. So I'm hoping he can take the next step, improve on his K rate again. I think he should be up towards 8 to 9 strikeouts per inning. And when he gets there, then he's really going to be probably the number 2 in this rotation. We'll see.
So you've got a clear top 4, a very good top 4 between Cal Maduro or Qui-Gon Jinn or another guy who I'm not naming. Who do you think will be the 5th guy come opening day?
It's kind of still up in the air right now. I'm figuring out. Qui-Gon Jinn has been getting extended look in spring training, but I'm not convinced that he's quite ready yet. He might have to start the season at AAA. On the other hand, Cal Maduro has also been getting starts, and he hasn't really been impressing me too much either. He might have to start in the bullpen, where he was actually really effective last year. And then, I've got several other guys. Ryan Helsley has been telling me he wants to be in the rotation for a while now. I think he could do it. He got a few starts last year as an opener and got blown away, though. So not sure yet. I'm giving him a few starts this spring to see what he looks like. But I think he can hold himself down as a number 5.
He'd fit that mold of the high K guys that you seem to like.
I do like that, yeah. You'd think I'd go for more of a movement pitcher with my park, but
well, it doesn't matter if the fly balls stay in the yard if they're not touching the ball to begin with.
Right. I tend to think that as long as the pitcher can keep his whip down, home runs aren't going to kill me. So get a lot of strikeouts, don't walk a lot of guys, and in general, you'll be okay. So yeah, we got those guys. Pete O'Donnell is an interesting prospect that made his debut last year. He can start, but he might be better off in the bullpen where his stuff will play better.
Yeah.
Brian Perez, who I brought in last year for another slugging first baseman, is an option, but he's definitely better off in the bullpen. He's kind of struggled as a starter last year.
And then
So
you have
yeah,
the
and then
injury this
you
year.
add in Michael Baez, Mitchell Baez, whatever you say his name. He's traditionally been a starter who I think is better off in the bullpen. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of toying with a couple ideas right now.
Mhm.
Eventually, it's going to be Qui-Gon Jinn up there, and he might wind up being the ace out of all those guys. He's really going to be something. But for now, we're gonna feel it out in this spring. Go with who I think is the best guy, and move from there depending on how it goes.
That rotation stacked against the other American League teams, or let's take it league wide. Top five, top five, higher than top five. Do you think you're, three, 2, 3?
That's tough to say. I mean, there are some very, very, very good rotations in this league.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put myself right around top five, though. I think I have the depth, maybe not this top end 1, 2, 3 that some other teams have, because I think some of my guys are still developing. They're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel very comfortable with the arms I have this year, and I'm going to have all of them for a pretty long time. I mean, Briggs is locked into another 9 or 10 year extension. Qui-Gon Jinn isn't even on contract yet. Ohtani is locked in for extended period. Clisby's pre-arb. I mean, we got all these guys for a long time, and they're going to be doing some work together for a while.
And that consistency would be really important for developing that rotation.
Yeah, definitely.
Going over to the offensive side of things, reading through your lineup, it looks like you really only have one position where the opening day starter is up for grabs, and that's second base. Mr. Foxy's a CCP. I would think he's one of your guys who you're giving an extended look at, or Sam Bianco can continue to get playing time there. Who do you like? Who's get the inside track so far in spring training?
Right now, I think it's still Sam Bianco, particularly against right-handed hitters or pitchers. He really played well for me last year, although he was injured for a good, I don't know, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But that guy just, all I needed him to do was get on base. Get on base. Let Mike Trout, let Ohtani, let Ramos just hit you in, and that's all he did, and it was perfect. 382 OBP. You can't ask for anything more than that. The biggest problem with Bianco was his defense. He's fine, but it's really hard to find a good defensive second baseman, I feel like, that can hit as well. So that's kind of where Mr. Foxy comes in. He's a better defender. He's got a bit more positional versatility. He's got more power. He spent a couple years in AAA and has really not been able to figure out his plate discipline, which has kind of kept him from moving up to the next level. So I'm hoping that this year he's going to work in at second base, especially against lefties. He'll be that kind of defensive knife for me, where he can go in across, the infield, play some short, play some third if needed, get time at second, and continue to hone in on his bat, because I think there's something there. I think he can be an everyday second baseman eventually. He's just kind of turning into a late bloomer at this point.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that, especially 25 years old. He's still got a little bit of time.
Definitely. Yeah, he's got time. I just don't see him taking over the entirety of the second base role from Bianco, and Bianco plays his role the way he does.
He'll continue to get plate appearances.
Yeah.
Well, outside of second base and catcher, who's Bart's a decent offensive option, and with Maury, I don't think that there's another real weak spot in the lineup. You go Thornton at first base, Arenado at third. Andrelton Simmons is not an offensive player, obviously, but he's an amazing defender.
Nope.
You're moving Mike Trout to left field, which is really big, and then Barry Allen's going to take over in center.
Yeah.
This lineup, top to bottom, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked you about your rotation. Where do you feel that slots in compared to other top lineups around the league?
Top three.
Top three. All right.
Maybe higher. I think we're going to put up a lot of runs this year. We got that good combination of guys that get on base and guys that drive them in. So it's going to be about staying healthy. It's going to be about continuing to play good defense, which is always tough when you've got a lineup that hits this well. You're generally not going to have the defense to match it. But I think I've put together a team that can play above average defense as well and help the pitching staff. And so hopefully that kind of plays into the pitching, which allows the hitters to not have to go in and, put up 10 runs a game. And it's just complimentary baseball at that point.
I like it. Looking ahead at this year's, what you're going to be facing this year. The two West divisions are markedly stronger than the two East divisions. The AL West features you, who won a World Series in 24 and has the best record over the last 3 years. Houston, who won the World Series last year and has the second best record over those years. And Seattle, whose last year's their pitching staff was awesome. They have several elite hitters, and they've only gotten better this offseason trying to launch themselves into that conversation. Over in the East, you have Baltimore, you have Tampa Bay, you have Cleveland. In the AL landscape, where do you think your team should end up this year, and what teams worry you the most?
The goal is a division title. The goal is 100-plus wins in a division title. I think the AL West in particular is very split between the best teams and the worst teams. There's going to be 3 or 4 really poor teams, at least 3. And there's going to be 3 or 4 really, really good teams. So it's going to come down to beating the snot out of the teams that are rebuilding right now and hanging as tough as we can with the top of the teams, the top tier. But I think Houston is obviously the biggest team that I'm worried about. And Seattle's close behind them. They've made some really savvy moves this offseason to get better. I don't know. I'd have to look at their team again. I'm not convinced, though, that their pitching staff is quite where it needs to be to hang with Houston or myself, hopefully. In the East, I think Cleveland is the one that scares me the most. Cleveland is an up-and-comer. They've got some really, really good CCPs. They've got Aaron Judge. And then I put Baltimore right behind him. But I think Houston is by far my biggest challenge this year. And they're the top of the class. So they're the ones I'm gunning for the most.
All right.
We'll see how it goes.
I'm looking forward to watching you two go at it again like last year. Last year was a really epic race all season long. I did the power rankings last year, and you two dominated the top 2 spots for most of the season. I anticipate that being the case again this year.
I hope so. Ben is a great person to compete against. He's fun to talk smack with.
You know what? When I first joined the league, I didn't get much of a taste of Ben's personality, but it's come out more and more over the last, say, year and a half. And he is a really fun guy, especially when he's winning, because he gets cocky.
Yeah. He wasn't so talkative in the 24 season, though, was he? A little more quiet.
No, he wasn't. You feel pretty good about that?
What's that?
You said you felt pretty good about that?
I always feel good about that 24 season, even if it kind of came out of left field.
So, can we call you the presumptive 2027 world champions? You're going to go ahead and put that expectation out there?
Oh, boy. Not to sound cocky, but yes.
All right.
We're taking the whole league by storm this year. I don't see how anything less than 95 to 100 wins is disappointing in my eyes.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to see what you do this year.
Thanks, man.
Of course. Well, this has been awesome. I'm really glad I got to have you on the show here. You're a GM who we don't normally get to see much of because it's normally the guys who just do the podcasts on a regular basis. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having you back and interviewing you as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk shop.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the WHIP, the We Have Interviews podcast. Tom was an awesome guest today. Our editor Andrew will make sure links and everything to everything eMLB will be in the description. Thank you guys for joining us. Peace.
Appreciate it.
Okay, it's recording.